I'm staring at the DNA results on my phone screen, and my hands are shaking so hard I can barely hold it. 99.97% probability that Jake is not Emma's father. But there's another line that makes my blood turn to ice, 49.8% probability of uncle relationship. My brother. My own fucking brother. The phone slips from my trembling fingers and clatters onto our kitchen counter, the same granite countertop Jake surprised me with for our 3rd anniversary. The same counter where I'd lean against him while he cooked dinner, where we planned our future over morning coffee, where I'd kiss him goodbye every morning like I was still the faithful wife he thought he married. Jake's been suspicious for months. Emma's eyes are too dark, her nose too narrow, her laugh too familiar in all the wrong ways. Nothing like his Germanic features with those pale blue eyes and strong jaw, or my Italian ones with the olive skin and dark curls. When he first suggested the test 3 weeks ago, I laughed it off, called him paranoid, accused him of watching too many daytime talk shows. Babe, she's got your stubborn streak and my dramatic flair, I'd said, bouncing Emma on my hip while she giggled. What more proof do you need? But inside, my stomach was already eating itself alive. I'd been living with this secret for 2.5 years, ever since Emma was born with those unmistakable dark eyes that belonged to neither of us. Eyes that belonged to David. We've been together 8 years, married for 5. Jake was my safe choice after years of dating losers who couldn't commit to a weekend trip, let alone a future. Brad the bartender who forgot my birthday. Marcus the musician who cheated with his backup singer. Tyler the tech bro who ghosted me after I mentioned wanting kids someday. Then came Jake. Steady job at the engineering firm, wanted kids before 30, treated me like a queen from our very first date. He brought me flowers on random Tuesdays, remembered my coffee order, called my mom on her birthday. He was everything I thought I wanted after years of uncertainty and disappointment. But steady felt boring after a while. Predictable. Safe became suffocating when my friends kept posting their glamorous lives on Instagram while I was changing diapers and meal prepping on Sundays. Girls' trips to Vegas while I was home with a baby monitor. Date nights at expensive restaurants while Jake and I split a pizza and watched Netflix. You're so young, my sister Sophia would say during our weekly calls. You settled too fast. You never got to really live. She was single at 35, traveling the world with her photography business, dating different men every month. Everything I'd given up for domestic bliss. My college friends weren't much better. Amanda constantly complained about her husband's boring job and predictable routine. At least you know what you're getting every day, I'd tell her. That's not romance, that's a schedule, she'd shoot back. When's the last time Jake surprised you? Really surprised you? I couldn't remember. Our life had become a comfortable routine. Work, dinner, TV, bed. Rinse and repeat. Even our sex life had become scheduled around Emma's nap times and bedtime routines. Efficient. Practical. Dead. It started innocently with David. Jake's younger brother, the one who never grew up. 5 years younger than Jake's 32, covered in tattoos that told stories of adventures I'd never have, riding a motorcycle that screamed freedom. Everything Jake wasn't. While Jake wore pressed khakis and button-downs to his office job, David wore ripped jeans and leather jackets to his gigs as a freelance photographer. Jake had always been protective of me around David. He's not the settling type, he'd warn when David would flirt harmlessly at family gatherings. Don't take anything he says seriously. But that protectiveness just made David seem more forbidden, more exciting. When David moved back to town last spring after a year traveling through Europe, I found excuses to see him. Coffee runs when Jake was at work. Just helping David get settled back home. Offering to show him around the new developments in town. Jake's too busy with the Morrison project. The flirtation was electric from the start. David had this way of looking at me like he could see straight through the suburban mom facade to the woman I used to be. The one who stayed out too late and kissed strangers in crowded bars. The one who took risks and lived in the moment. Jake's lucky, he'd say, his eyes lingering on my lips when I talked. If you were mine, I'd never let you out of my sight. I should have stopped it there. Should have recognized the danger and how his attention made my pulse quicken, how I started putting on makeup for grocery store runs just in case I ran into him, how I began comparing every interaction with Jake to the excitement I felt around David. Instead, I leaned into it. Started texting David about random things. Funny memes, complaints about Emma's teething, questions about restaurants Jake and I should try. Innocent conversations that gradually became more personal, more flirtatious. Missing the single life? David would text. Sometimes, I'd respond, immediately feeling guilty but not deleting the message. I could show you what you're missing. I should have blocked his number. Should have told Jake. Should have remembered that I had everything I needed at home. Instead, I saved David's contact under my friend Rebecca's name and kept the conversations going. The build-up lasted months. Stolen glances at family barbecues. His hand lingering on my arm when he'd hug me hello. The way he'd compliment my outfits, my hair, the small changes Jake never seemed to notice anymore. "You look incredible in that dress," he'd whisper when Jake was distracted with his parents. "That color makes your eyes shine." Jake would come home from work and kiss my cheek distractedly, already thinking about tomorrow's meetings or weekend lawn care. David made me feel seen. Desired. Alive in ways I'd forgotten were possible. The night it happened, Jake was working late again on a project deadline. The third time that week. Emma was finally sleeping through the night, and I was drowning in the quiet loneliness of our perfect suburban life. David texted around 8 p.m., "Kitchen sink giving you trouble?" Jake mentioned it was acting up. I hadn't even told Jake about the sink yet, but David was right. The faucet had been dripping for days, driving me crazy during Emma's afternoon naps. "It's fine," I texted back. "Jake will fix it this weekend. I'm 5 minutes away. Got tools in the truck." I should have said no. Should have waited for Jake. Should have called a real plumber. Instead, I found myself checking my appearance in the hallway mirror, applying lip gloss I hadn't worn in weeks. David arrived with his toolbox and that dangerous smile, wearing a fitted black t-shirt that showed off the tattoo sleeve I'd been admiring for months. While he worked under the sink, I found excuses to hover nearby, bringing him water, asking questions about the repair I didn't care about. "You don't have to entertain me," he said, his voice muffled from under the cabinet. "Though I'm not complaining about the view." Heat flooded my cheeks. "David?" "What?" "I'm just saying Jake's a lucky man." He slid out from under the sink and caught my eyes. "Though between you and me, I don't think he appreciates what he has." "That's not true." But my voice lacked conviction. "When's the last time he told you how beautiful you are? When's the last time he surprised you with anything other than takeout and Netflix?" I couldn't answer because he was right. Jake showed love through stability, through providing, through being present. But he'd stopped seeing me as a woman somewhere along the way. I'd become the mother of his child, his partner in domestic duties, but not the person who could make his pulse race. "We should open wine while we wait for the parts to cure," David said, gesturing to the sink. "This'll need an hour to set properly." I knew exactly what I was doing when I pulled out the good wine, the bottle Jake had been saving for a special occasion that never seemed to come. I knew what message I was sending when I dimmed the kitchen lights and suggested we sit on the back porch where the neighbors couldn't see us. David kept complimenting how I looked, how Jake was lucky to have me, how he'd never take someone like me for granted. Every word was a drop of poison in the well of my marriage, and I drank it eagerly. "You deserve better than this," he said, gesturing around our beautiful home, the life I built with his brother. "You deserve someone who sees you." Jake sees me. Jake sees a wife and mother. I see a woman who's dying inside that perfect little box she's built around herself. The wine made everything feel softer, more romantic. The summer evening air, the way David's eyes never left my face, the electricity I felt when he moved closer on the porch swing Jake had built for me last Father's Day. "You're beautiful, Sarah. Stunning. And you have no idea, do you?" When I put my hand on his arm, I felt his muscles tense under my fingers. When I leaned in close enough for him to smell my perfume, I heard his breath catch. I was playing with fire, and I knew it. "Jake doesn't have to know," he whispered against my ear. And God help me, I kissed him. It wasn't soft or tentative. It was hungry, desperate, full of months of built-up tension and years of feeling invisible in my own marriage. David kissed me like I was water in a desert, like he'd been thinking about this moment as long as I had. His hands tangled in my hair, and I forgot everything else. Forgot Jake working late to provide for our family. Forgot Emma sleeping peacefully upstairs in the nursery Jake had painted by hand. Forgot the vows I'd made in front of God and our families 5 years ago. We moved to the couch when the porch became too exposed, too risky. David's hands roamed my body like he was memorizing every curve, every freckle. He whispered things Jake had never said, told me how long he'd wanted me, how he'd watch me at family gatherings and imagine what it would be like to have me. "I've thought about you every day since I moved back," he breathed against my neck. "Driving by your house, seeing you in the yard with Emma, knowing I could never have you." "You have me now," I whispered back, and meant it. We made love on the couch Jake and I had picked out together for our first apartment, the one where we'd watched movies and planned our future. David touched me like I was precious, like I was worth risking everything for. He made me feel desired in ways I'd forgotten were possible. Afterward, lying in his arms while he traced patterns on my bare shoulder, reality began creeping back in. The wedding photos on the mantel. Emma's toys scattered around the living room. Jake's coffee mug still sitting by the sink from that morning. "We can't do this again," I whispered. "I know," David said, but his hand was still stroking my hair. This was just tonight. But we both knew it wasn't just tonight. The line had been crossed, and there was no going back. It was supposed to be once. Just once, to get it out of my system. A moment of weakness I could bury and forget. But David made me feel things Jake never had. Dangerous. Wanted. Alive in ways that made my regular life feel like sleepwalking. I started making up book clubs that didn't exist. Girls' nights with friends who weren't expecting me. Grocery runs that took 3 hours. Meeting David at his apartment while my husband thought I was getting my nails done or having coffee with my sister. David's place was everything our house wasn't. Messy, spontaneous, filled with photographs from his travels and art from local shows. His walls told stories of adventure and freedom, everything I'd given up for stability. "You could come with me," he'd say after we made love in his unmade bed. "I'm thinking about moving to Portland next year. Starting fresh. I have Emma. I have a life here. You have a prison." Part of me knew he was right. But I also knew David wasn't offering me forever. He was offering me an escape, a fantasy, a break from the real world. He'd never mentioned love, never talked about building something together. I was his adventure, his forbidden fruit, his brother's wife who made the conquest more thrilling. But God, the sex was incredible. Jake was tender and considerate, but predictable. Missionary position twice a week, always after Emma was asleep, always quietly so we wouldn't wake her. David was passionate, spontaneous, demanding. He wanted me in ways that made me feel powerful and desired. "Jake doesn't touch you like this," he'd whisper, his hands exploring my body like uncharted territory. "No," I gasped. "Never like this. He doesn't know what he has." The guilt was eating me alive, but I couldn't stop. Every time I decided it was the last time, David would text me something that pulled me back in. A photo from one of his shoots with the caption "Reminds me of your eyes." A song he'd heard that made him think of me. A simple "missing you" that made my heart race. I became an expert liar. Elaborate stories about book club drama and friend emergencies. New hobbies that required me to leave the house for hours. I deleted text messages and cleared browser histories. I bought new lingerie and told Jake it was for him, then wore it to David's apartment. The worst part was how easy the lies became. How natural it felt to kiss Jake goodbye while planning my afternoon with his brother. How I could sit through family dinners, watching David across the table, sharing secret glances while Jake talked about work. Jake's parents would compliment how happy I looked, how radiant. "Marriage suits you," his mother would say. "You're glowing." I was glowing because I was living a double life, feeling desired and reckless and alive. But it wasn't marriage making me glow. It was betrayal. When I found out I was pregnant, I convinced myself it had to be Jake's. The timing was close enough if I fudged the numbers. I'd been with both brothers during my fertile window, but Jake and I had been trying for another baby. It made sense that it would be his. I threw myself into being the perfect pregnant wife. Cooking his favorite meals every night. Initiating sex more frequently than I had in years. Anything to push down the sick feeling in my stomach, the voice in my head that whispered the truth I couldn't face. "You're amazing," Jake would say, rubbing my growing belly. "Emma's going to be such a good big sister." I'd smile and lean into him, all while knowing I might be carrying his brother's child. David and I had to be more careful once I started showing. Fewer meetings, more creative excuses. But the pregnancy made everything more intense. He was fascinated by my changing body, called me beautiful when I felt huge and ungainly. "Whoever this baby's father is," he'd say, kissing my swollen belly, "they're lucky." "It's Jake's baby," I'd insist. "Of course it is," he'd agree, but something in his eyes suggested he had doubts too. Emma was born with David's dark eyes, David's narrow nose, David's mischievous smile. But newborns change so much in their first months that I convinced myself I was imagining the resemblance. Jake cried when he held her, called her his little princess, talked about teaching her to ride bikes and helping her with homework. I watched my husband fall in love with a child who might not be his and felt my soul rot from the inside out. The first few months after Emma's birth were a fog of sleepless nights and new parent anxiety. David tried to see me a few times, but between breastfeeding and Jake working from home more often, opportunities were limited. "I miss you," he'd text. "I know. This is just hard right now. When can I see you?" "Really see you?" I ended things with David when Emma was 3 months old. Not because I stopped wanting him, but because the risk was becoming too great. Jake was already suspicious of how much time I spent running errands. Emma looked more like David every day. And frankly, David was getting restless. "I got an offer to shoot a wedding in California," he told me during what I decided would be our last meeting. "Might turn into something permanent." "That's great," I said, though my heart was breaking. Come with me. David, you know I can't. Why not? Jake doesn't appreciate you. He never has. You could bring Emma. We could be a real family. The fantasy was tempting for exactly 30 seconds before reality crashed back in. David didn't want a family. He wanted an adventure. And when the novelty wore off, when Emma started teething and crying at 3 a.m., when I looked tired and stressed instead of radiant and forbidden, he'd move on to the next conquest. We have to stop, I told him. Before someone gets hurt. Someone's already hurt, he said, pulling me closer. You're dying in that house, Sarah. I can see it. I have responsibilities. You have a life. Or you could have one. But I couldn't abandon Jake, couldn't destroy Emma's chance at having a stable family. So I ended it. Told David we couldn't see each other anymore, couldn't text, couldn't maintain any contact beyond family gatherings. He just shrugged and said he was seeing someone new anyway. A model he'd met at a gallery opening. Like our affair meant nothing. Like his brother's marriage meant nothing. Like I meant nothing. It was fun while it lasted, he said, kissing my cheek like I was a distant cousin instead of the woman he'd been sleeping with for 8 months. That casual dismissal hurt more than I expected. I'd risked everything for him, and he was already moving on. But I pushed the pain down and focused on rebuilding my marriage. For 2 years, I lived in this bubble of terror and guilt. Every time Jake played with Emma, every time he posted photos calling her daddy's girl, every time his parents gushed about how much she looked like the family, I died a little more. But I also tried to be better. More present, more grateful, more the wife Jake deserved. I stopped complaining about our routine, started appreciating his consistency. Initiated date nights and weekend getaways. Worked on rebuilding the intimacy I'd betrayed. Jake noticed the changes. You seem happier lately, he'd say. More like yourself again. If only he knew I was trying to become someone worthy of the life I'd almost thrown away. But Emma kept growing, and her resemblance to David became impossible to ignore. At family gatherings, people would comment on how different she looked from both Jake and me. She must get those features from a grandparent, they'd say diplomatically. Jake started asking questions. Casual at first. Weird how genetics work, isn't it? Then more pointed. She really doesn't look like either of us, does she? I deflected, made jokes, changed the subject. But I could see the doubt growing in his eyes, the way he'd study Emma's face like he was trying to solve a puzzle. The breaking point came 3 weeks ago when Jake's cousin showed him a photo app that could predict what our kids would look like based on our features. The result looked nothing like Emma. This is stupid, I said, forcing a laugh. Apps can't predict genetics. Maybe, Jake said quietly. But maybe we should find out for sure. My blood turned to ice. Find out what? Whether Emma is mine. I wanted to refuse, to act outraged that he'd even suggest such a thing. But I'd been acting guilty for 2 years, and Jake was too smart not to notice. If that's what you need, I said finally. But it's going to hurt when you realize you doubted your own daughter for no reason. The test kit arrived 3 days later. Jake swabbed Emma's cheek while she giggled, thinking it was a game. I watched him seal the sample, knowing I was sealing my own fate. Now Jake's walking through the door, and I'm still holding the phone with our daughter's genetic betrayal glowing on the screen. His face goes white when he sees my expression, the way I'm clutching the counter like it's the only thing keeping me upright. The results came in, I whisper. He doesn't ask. Doesn't need to. The truth is written all over my face, in the way my hands are shaking, in the tears I'm trying not to cry. He just holds out his hand for the phone. I watch 20 years of brotherhood and 8 years of marriage disintegrate in real time as his eyes scan the screen. The color drains from his face like someone pulled a plug. His jaw clenches, his hands curl into fists, and for a moment I think he might hit something. Instead, he takes a deep breath and looks at me with eyes I've never seen before. Cold. Empty. Like he's looking at a stranger. David, he says. Not a question. A statement. Like he already knew but needed confirmation of my betrayal. I try to speak, to explain, to beg for forgiveness, but nothing comes out. What could I possibly say? That I was lonely? That David made me feel desired? That I thought I could have both and no one would get hurt? Jake sets the phone down carefully, like it might explode if handled roughly. He walks to the closet and pulls out his overnight bag, the one we use for weekend trips. Starts packing with methodical precision. Jake, please, I finally manage. Let me explain. He stops packing and looks at me. Really looks at me. Explain what, Sarah? Explain how you fucked my brother? Explain how you let me raise another man's child for 2 years? Explain how you sat through family dinners and watched me play with Emma, knowing she wasn't mine? Each word hits like a physical blow. It wasn't like that. What was it like then? Tell me what it was like to lie to my face every single day for 2 years. I can't answer because there is no good answer. No justification that doesn't make me sound selfish and cruel. Jake finishes packing and walks to Emma's room. I hear him whispering to her, his voice soft and breaking. Daddy loves you so much, little one. So much. Don't ever forget that, okay? When he comes back downstairs, his eyes are red but his voice is steady. I'll have my lawyer contact you about custody arrangements. For Emma. The way he says her name breaks something in me. Don't call me. Don't text me. Don't come to my work. We're done. Jake, please, we can work through this. People get past affairs. We can go to counseling, we can. People get past affairs, he interrupts. They don't get past this. You didn't just cheat, Sarah. You destroyed everything. My relationship with my brother. My family. My daughter. She's still your daughter in every way that matters. No, he says quietly. She's not. And you made sure of that. He picks up his bag and heads for the door. I follow him, desperate, pathetic. Jake, I love you. I never stopped loving you. David meant nothing. It was just physical, just a mistake. He stops with his hand on the doorknob. If I meant nothing, you wouldn't have kept fucking him for 8 months. If Emma meant nothing, you would have told me the truth from the beginning. Don't insult me by calling it a mistake. Mistakes are accidental. This was a choice. A series of choices. I chose you in the end. I ended it with David. I chose our family. You chose yourself, he says. You always chose yourself. The door closes with a soft click. No yelling. No throwing things. No dramatic confrontation. Just silence. And somehow, that's worse than anything. I stand in my empty house, surrounded by the life I've just destroyed, and finally understand what I've lost. Not just my husband, not just my marriage, but my integrity. My family. My future. Emma starts crying upstairs, and I realize I have to figure out how to raise her alone. How to explain why Daddy doesn't live here anymore. How to live with the fact that every time I look at her, I'll see David's eyes staring back at me, reminding me of the worst decision I ever made. The house feels hollow now, haunted by the ghost of the family I used to have. I walk through rooms Jake and I decorated together, past photos of happier times, through the kitchen where I betrayed him with his own brother. My phone buzzes with a text from my sister. How did Jake take the news about your promotion? I realize Jake hasn't told anyone yet. That tomorrow I'll have to start explaining to friends and family that my marriage is over, that Emma isn't Jake's daughter, that I'm the villain in this story. I sink onto the couch where David and I first made love and finally let myself cry. Not for what I've lost, but for what I've done. For the man upstairs sleeping alone in a hotel room, wondering how his wife could betray him so completely. For the little girl who's going to grow up without the father who chose her, loved her, wanted her. For the family I destroyed with my own selfish hands. 3 months later, I'm living in my parents' basement with a toddler who keeps asking where Daddy went. The basement that used to be my teenage refuge, now my 30-year-old prison. Pink walls I painted at 16 still showing through the beige my dad hastily slapped over them. My childhood bed pushed against the wall to make room for Emma's crib. Jake moved out of state for a job transfer 2 weeks after he left. Portland, Oregon. As far from his cheating wife and lying family as he could get without leaving the country. Changed his number? Blocked me on every social media platform. Had his mail forwarded to his lawyer's office so I couldn't even send letters. His family treats me like I have the plague. His mother, who used to call me daughter and invite me to girls' shopping days, crosses the street when she sees me at the grocery store. His father, who taught me to change my oil and bragged about my promotion at work, acts like I don't exist. The custody hearing was brutal. Jake's lawyer painted me as an unfit mother who destroyed her family through infidelity and deception. A woman so selfish she let an innocent man raise another man's child for 2 years, never once considering the psychological damage she was inflicting. My lawyer tried to argue for joint custody, pointing out that I was Emma's primary caregiver, that she needed stability, that punishing the child for the mother's mistakes wasn't in anyone's best interest. But when Jake testified about the paternity results, about finding out his wife had been screwing his brother in their family home, about 2 years of loving a child who wasn't biologically his while his wife watched him get attached, the judge's face said everything. The court finds that the minor child's best interests are served by primary custody remaining with Mr. Mitchell, who has served as her father figure since birth, Judge Morrison announced. Mrs. Mitchell will be granted supervised visitation every other weekend pending completion of court-ordered therapy and parenting classes. Supervised visitation? Like I was a danger to my own daughter. Like the affair somehow made me an unfit mother. I get Emma 4 days a month. 48 hours every 2 weeks, supervised by a court-appointed social worker who takes notes on everything I say and do. Jake has her the rest of the time, and according to my parents who still talk to his mom through mutual friends, he's an incredible single father. Takes her to dance classes at the community center. Reads her bedtime stories over video chat when he travels for work. Hired a nanny who speaks Spanish so Emma grows up bilingual. Everything a real dad would do. Everything he was doing before he knew she wasn't his blood. The irony isn't lost on me. Jake turned out to be more of a father to Emma after learning she wasn't his than David ever would have been if he'd known she was. David? Gone. Moved to California a week after Jake confronted him. Didn't even say goodbye to Emma, didn't acknowledge that he might be leaving his biological daughter behind. Just vanished like the coward he always was. I found out through Instagram that he's already engaged to some yoga instructor he met on a dating app. Posted photos of his proposal on a beach in Malibu, calling her his soulmate and the love of his life. The same words he whispered to me in his apartment while I betrayed my husband. My sister told me he deleted all his social media after Jake's friends started commenting on his posts, calling him a homewrecker and worse. But his fiancée still posts about their perfect life. Their couples yoga sessions, their weekend wine tastings, their organic garden. Everything I thought I wanted when I was suffocating in suburban motherhood. The cruel truth? David got his happily ever after. Jake found the strength to start over. I'm the only one whose life imploded. My friends evaporated once word got out about the affair. Sarah, who used to complain about her husband's boring job and predictable routine, suddenly stopped returning my calls. When I finally cornered her at Target, she made awkward small talk for 30 seconds before excusing herself. I just think it's better if we take a break, she said, not meeting my eyes. Mike feels uncomfortable with me being friends with someone who, you know. Jennifer, who'd been pushing me to live a little when I was married, acts like we never met when I run into her around town. The same Jennifer who used to complain that monogamy was unnatural, that marriage was just a piece of paper, that we were too young to be tied down. The mom group chat went silent the day I was removed from it. 15 women I'd shared everything with for 3 years. Playdates and potluck recipes and late-night venting sessions about teething and sleep schedules. Gone. I found out they'd started a new chat without me when Emma's former playmate had a birthday party I wasn't invited to. Emma kept asking why we couldn't go to Lily's princess party, why her friends didn't want to play with her anymore. How do you explain to a 2-year-old that mommy made choices that hurt people, and now everyone's angry at us? I got fired from my marketing job after my boss heard about the family drama. Officially for performance issues, but everyone knew. The whole company knew Jake through networking events and community involvement. He'd been the face of our United Way campaign, the guy everyone respected for his integrity and work ethic. I was the woman who cheated with her brother-in-law. That was my legacy now. We feel it's best for company morale if you pursue other opportunities, HR explained during my termination meeting. This situation has created an uncomfortable environment for other employees. Translation: nobody wanted to work with the adulterous wife who destroyed her family. Finding new work was nearly impossible. My industry is small, and word travels fast. 3 interviews where everything went well until they called my references. 2 job offers rescinded after background checks that somehow revealed my personal drama. I finally found work at a call center 40 minutes from town. Night shift so I could see Emma during my limited custody time. Minimum wage with no benefits, taking abuse from angry customers who couldn't pay their bills. A far cry from the marketing manager position I'd worked 5 years to achieve. My parents try to be supportive, but I can see the disappointment in their eyes every time they look at me. They raised me better than this. Taught me about commitment and honesty and putting family first. How could you do this to that boy? My mother asked the night I moved back in. Jake loved you. He would have done anything for you and Emma. I know, Mom. Do you? Do you really? Because I don't understand how someone I raised could be so selfish. So cruel. My father hasn't said much, but his silence speaks volumes. The man who walked me down the aisle and told Jake he was gaining a daughter, not losing one. Who bragged about his son-in-law to his golf buddies. Who called Jake the best thing that ever happened to me. Now he can barely look at me. Dating is impossible. Every man who finds out about Emma eventually asks about her father, and I have to explain that my daughter doesn't have one because I destroyed that relationship in the most spectacular way possible. So you cheated? They ask. It's complicated. With his brother? Yes. That's usually where the conversation ends. Most guys don't call back after that revelation. The few who do are looking for easy sex with a woman who's already proven she can't be trusted. Men who figure if I cheated on my husband, I'll definitely sleep with them on the first date. I tried online dating for exactly 3 weeks before giving up. Too many men who saw single mom and assumed I was desperate. Too many awkward conversations where I had to explain why my daughter calls her biological father's name in her sleep even though he's not in the picture. Daddy. Daddy. Emma will cry sometimes during naps, and it breaks my heart because she means Jake. The man who sang her to sleep every night for 2 years. Who taught her to say please and thank you and I love you. Who was more her father than David could ever be. Emma started asking why her cousins don't want to play with her anymore at the few family gatherings I still get invited to. Why Uncle David doesn't visit. Why Mommy cries when she sees Jake's parents at the grocery store. Where's Daddy? Has become her most frequent question. Daddy had to move far away for work, I tell her, which isn't exactly a lie. When is he coming back? I don't know, sweetheart. Can we call him? Daddy's very busy right now. She's too young to understand that Mommy ruined everything, but she's not too young to feel the aftermath. The way adults get quiet when we enter a room. The way former friends make excuses to leave when they see us at the park. The way her grandmother on Jake's side pretends not to know her name. The supervised visits are torture. Emma clings to me for the first hour, confused about why a strange woman is watching us play. The social worker, Mrs. Chen, takes notes on everything. How I interact with Emma, whether I seem stable, if I make any inappropriate comments about Jake or the custody arrangement. Emma seems to have some attachment anxiety, she